Okay, chapter 17 just talks about prevention. So this one will be pretty brief, but make sure you know the difference between primary prevention and secondary prevention. Primary prevention is going to be more geared at people who have not tried different substances or who have only tried it very rarely. So you're usually talking like a younger population, and it's going to be things that basically try to teach them information about it, make sure that they don't choose to make those decisions. When you get into secondary prevention, that's more for people who have tried the drug in question or a variety of substances. And usually for them, it's more trying to prevent them from making that decision again or from moving into more dangerous substances. Um, Tertiary prevention, then you have a couple of other, there's tertiary, universal, selective, and indicated. Tertiary is going to be more like a relapse prevention. So people who are coming out of rehab or something like that and trying to make sure that that doesn't happen again. Universal is going to be, it can go to the entire population. Okay. Like everybody that's at the school or everybody in a certain community. Selective prevention is going to be more for a specific group. So maybe people who are high risk. So maybe you're going to look into like a lower income society and gear something specifically towards them, or you're going to go to a super wealthy society and gear something specific towards them, towards what might be in their community and what they're trying to keep those people from participating in. Indicated prevention is going to be more for people who show signs of developing problems. So again, it could be people who start smoking at a young age. Okay, then let's get these people in a program to make sure they don't partake in other behaviors. Things like that. Someone who has gotten in trouble for driving under the influence for the first time, make sure that they don't repeat that, those types of programs. When it talks about prevention in schools, you guys have seen some of this progress, but basically it kind of started with what they called the knowledge, attitudes, behavior model. And, just making sure people had facts, what the knowledge, like what is, what is all the facts about these different substances, moving into how do we form attitudes about them. And obviously the idea would be to make sure people, I don't want to say had negative attitudes towards the drug, but in the same sense, that's kind of the idea. You didn't want people to want to do these drugs, so you're gonna try to create an environment where people have a negative attitude towards them so that they choose not to do it. And then the behavior part is obviously making sure that your behavior falls in line, that you don't have those behaviors, you don't choose to do those drugs. Um, then it kind of moved into what they called affective education, which is more kind of cognitive, looking at people's emotions, looking at people's attitudes. Um, After that, we kind of get into probably what more of you guys are familiar with. And there's the social influence model. Okay, and then it gives you kind of some specifics about what were some things that they talked about in the social influence model. Training refusal skills. So a lot of you guys have probably at some point been through something where they say, okay, if I offer you a drug, what are you going to say? And you're supposed to practice to saying like, oh no, thank you, I don't do that. Or, no, I can't because, I have to go do this. Or teaching you ways to be able to say no, basically. And then public commitment. Basically, there's these, you've probably seen this quite a few times, or maybe you've done it yourself, where you make some type of public commitment, whether it's signing a contract in front of people or getting up in front of a group and saying, I, I am committing to not drinking alcohol. I am committing to not doing drugs. Okay. Uh, Countering advertising. So trying to go against the advertising that's out there that promotes people doing drugs. Finding a way to advertise against that, and showing the downsides, like this is your brain on drugs commercial way back, which maybe you guys have never seen. But you know, they take an egg and they like smash it and they're like, this is your brain on drugs. And so that was a way to try to counter all the positive things that were being put out that might make people want to actually do drugs. Normative education, again, making sure people understand the real statistics and the real information. People a lot of times think, especially adolescents, they overestimate how many of their peers are doing what they think they're doing, like how many of their peers are going out and actually drinking or smoking or doing drugs. And so if they think everybody's doing it, then they're like, well, I'm going to do it too. But the reality is, if you get the statistics out there and you make sure people are educated, they're going to realize that there's not as, you know, it's not as common as you think it is. And you might actually be in the majority by not doing it. And then the last thing they talk about is using teen leaders. And that, again, if there are people who are similar to you telling you, like, I don't do drugs and I don't drink alcohol and this is where it's gotten me and I'm doing well. And when they see that, a lot of times people are more receptive, adolescents are more receptive than to have another adult, whether it's their parent, whether it's another adult, standing there saying you shouldn't do this because of this and this and this. Because the first thing adolescents are typically going to think is, well, you know, you're old or you don't understand or it's different now. And so if you have somebody that same age who is promoting that good behavior, that's also seen to be pretty convincing. And so then they talk about what most of you guys probably went through at some point. I don't know how much they still do it in schools, but for a while it was really, really big. Is the DARE program, Drug Abuse Resistance Education, probably one of the most popular programs that went through school systems. And it, you know, it was very successful for a while. Basically, this one of the things it says, a more recent review of 20 studies on DARE published found an average effect size that was small and not statistically significant. So they said it was a small, but it wasn't super significant. So not as, you know, effective as I think what we wanted. But then there were other studies too that showed, like in 1994, there was some effects reported on self-esteem, but not necessarily long-term reduction. Okay, so that one was kind of controversial too. Let's see. Increased knowledge, but again, the actual results of drug use, they couldn't really tell. So there's some different research out there in regards to that. If nothing else, we know that it educated people. We know, again, you saw some things there about self-esteem and social interaction and things like that. But some of the other programs that they talked about that have worked, let's see, Project Alert, that was one that they came up with. So you might just want to remember that and make sure you've read through on that program. They talk about some peer programs and how peer programs sometimes help out. And you have things like YMCA and YWCA, rec centers. We have a lot of, you know, youth centers now that have opened or that try to promote proper, you know, behavior, especially in regards to drugs and alcohol and those types of things. But like we said, in regards to the peer programs, peer influence can be one of the biggest during adolescent times, usually is one of the biggest influences, sometimes even more so than your family. Although long term, your family is usually the biggest influence in regards to making decisions like these. But again, in peer part, they have also what are called peer participation programs. Again, usually focused with groups that are at risk and you know, trying to get them to do community service work or things like that that are going to be more positive and try to create a more positive mentality and environment and make sure that they're not making those decisions to take drugs or drink alcohol or take that path. You have parent and family programs. So again, you're going to have informational type programs where you're provided, all the statistics and the information, making parents aware, making kids aware. Then you've got parenting skills. A lot of times parents are taught now different skills about how to handle these types of situations. You know, are you going to be the type that, tells your kid, well, you can drink as long as you call me, or it's but work through some of those situations and how to make sure you have good relationships with your kids so that you can communicate about these issues. Parent support groups, so parents who might have issues or who are trying to figure it out, they can get together and discuss family interaction approaches where everybody in the family kind of meets together, and maybe it's with the counselor, maybe it's in a group environment, but basically try to work through some of these issues and figuring out what decisions they're going to make. You obviously have community programs um, that people can participate in. Um, the DARE program would be a type of community program. Let's see. In the workplace, obviously, a lot of places implement policies, and a lot of places also now provide some type of counseling as part of their work environment, where if you're having issues, you can actually get free counseling or it's covered through your insurance, and you can go and talk to people, especially in regards to things like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, things like that. Let's see. And that's really it for prevention. The big thing is education and communication and having that good support system, and whether it be family or friends that are also kind of headed in the same track, and that is the best way, to keep people from making the decisions to, participate in drug use or alcohol use or anything like that.